Station. WTIM.
Welcome to the WTIM Morning Show. I'm Avery Cooper. Your stream on TaylorvilleDailyNews.com's Facebook and WTIM TV YouTube. Brought to you by Landmark of Taylorville, where you always do better with Landmark and People's Bank and Trust, where they put people first. On the phone right now, I have Professor Emeritus of Political Science at University of Illinois Springfield, Dr. Kent Redfield. He is a professor emeritus, of course, with political science at UIS, affiliated with the University of Illinois Institute of Government and Public Affairs and the Center for State Policy and Leadership at UIS. Dr. Redfield, it's great to have you on.
Good to be here.
So I think, obviously, in the political science world right now, you're paying a lot of attention, and probably have been for the last year, about this election coming up here Tuesday. And a side note for those out there that are listening, do your diligence, vote, etc. But aside from that, I wanted to ask you, Dr. Redfield, how you see some of the major issues of the day. What are some of the things that voters are making their decision on and impacting this midterm election?
Well, in terms of the candidates, I mean, clearly the things that are on people's minds are inflation, and then, crime and abortion. You look at the ads; those are the things that are moving the voters in terms of, at least the people who are spending the money. This is what they think the people care about. There's some concern about extremism and raising issues of democracy, but when we get to the state, it's pocketbook issues and safety issues. The old Ronald Reagan, are you better off now than you were 2 years ago or 4 years ago? So that's what you'll find.
And you alluded to crime. How much do you feel the SAFE-T Act will sway voters one way or the other?
Oh, I think the nuances of that, which is, I mean, it's a complex bill. No cash bail is one part of it, but you're certainly seeing on, particularly on the Republican side, that's an issue that they think at least reinforces their base. I'm not sure how much that moves independents, but you've got to get your base out there, and so you certainly have seen a lot of Republican candidates really, focusing on that. The Democrats, in terms of reinforcing their base, abortion is a hotbed issue in terms of, but it's not the chances change in that area in Illinois are not great given the Democratic control, and so. Particularly from the governor's standpoint, we're seeing a lot of focus on, the state was in terrible shape. We had a pandemic, and we've worked through all of that, and things are in pretty good shape. And you're getting a very different message from Senator Bailey.
Right, and you have alluded to it a couple of times here in the opening moments of this interview. These are the issues that both sides think are important to voters, but oftentimes, do you feel there's a discrepancy between what candidates think and feel is the right thing and what voters care about and what voters actually do care about? Do you ever observe a discrepancy, not necessarily just in this election, but other elections too?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think a lot of voters, do pay attention to specifics in terms of, a particular bill, a particular policy. Sometimes we tend to think that, whatever's going on nationally, people in Illinois care about. People in Illinois care, about, immigration issues and border, but it's not the immediate thing. Most voters are looking to be comfortable with whoever's representing. And if you're not on the hard left, hard right, policy sort of thing, then you're interested in somebody that you think understands you, that can empathize with you and your family. And so sometimes I think candidates don't spend enough time kind of trying to make connections with voters, and you never know what's going to come up. And so, you know, 2 years ago, 4 years ago, you weren't thinking, well, how can my representatives, how are they, or my governor, how are they going to deal with a global pandemic? And so, people want to be comfortable that the people representing them understand them, that they identify with their area. And so, a lot of people in central Illinois feel like they're not, state government doesn't connect with them, or all the attention is up on Chicago. And so, I think campaigns get a lot of mileage out of trying to make themselves, make their candidates feel like, people feel like this person's one of us. They understand us.
Right, right. Well, let's go into some of these races. Start off right at the top. Illinois governor's race. Senator Bailey taking on incumbent Democrat J.B. Pritzker. What have you observed that stands out the most to you about this race here, Dr. Redfield?
It's really, it's hard to tell they're talking about the same state, because the governor is doing two things. He's running, these are the things that I've done. We're building bridges, we're paving roads, we're balancing the budget, we got credit upgrades, and he wants to tell you that we're doing pretty well. And he also is focused on, Senator Bailey is too extreme. And if you can paint your opponent as too extreme, if they're out of, then you don't really need to worry about. It doesn't matter what their positions are, because they're just too extreme for Illinois. Senator Bailey, that opposite picture, that there's crime in the streets, schools are failing, the budget balance, the balanced budget is an illusion, and I'm a downstate farmer, and we've got too many billionaires running government. So these are pretty stark contrasts in terms of how what they want you to believe is going on, and fueled by a ton of money. The governor put $145 million of his own money. Bailey has a patron, a guy named Richard Euland, who's a billionaire businessman who's got $42 million in an independent expenditure committee. You're just getting hit constantly with these TV ads, mailers. I think at some point people kind of start to turn it off, because it just gets to be overkill.
Right. I believe the governor's race is one of the most expensive in the entire country in terms of the gubernatorial races. Let's move on a little bit down to the Secretary of State's race, which is interesting because there will be a new Secretary of State for the first time this century. Overview this a little bit, if you would, Dr. Redfield.
Yeah, it certainly seems like Jesse White has been Secretary of State for life, and so this is an office that used to be really, really important, because back in the heavy patronage area, these were a lot of jobs in every county. Now, we have much less of that now. I mean, and so it's an office that's often a stepping stone. And so, Brady and Giannoulis are probably not, they don't envision themselves being Secretary of State for life. They really are, we have had, Governor Edgar, Governor Ryan were former Secretary of State. So it's a good stepping stone. It's hard to get really exciting ideas out of the Secretary of State's office. I mean, we seem to be arguing a little bit about whether it would be better to have more technology to handle your request to deal with your motor vehicle problems, or whether we ought to have more people behind the counter and stuff. So it's hard to find those sexy ideas, but it's a valued position from the political side, because you really get name recognition and stuff. And right. So again, expensive race, but not, everything is in the shadow of the governor's race.
Let's take a look a little bit. I would agree with you that everything's in the shadow of the governor's race. But I think here in the 15th district, a lot of eyes are on the race between Mary Miller and Paul Lang. Miller is an incumbent, but not in the 15th district just because of redistricting and all that stuff. We could spend a whole segment talking about that, but we're not going to. And they're taking Mary Miller's taking on Paul Lang. What sticks out to you about this race?
It is a product of redistricting, and so the Democrats do a district that used to have a lot of Central Illinois and now less, but is Central Illinois. The 13th, they do it, to be much more Democratic, and then they do a district up in Rockford, and essentially, kind of everything left ends up in the 15th. So it's a very rural district. Quincy is the biggest city in the district. A lot of new territory, but it's very very conservative and very very Republican. So the primary was the election. There's no question that Representative Miller is going to be reelected from the new district, and this will be a very safe seat for a long period of time. We'll see how smart the Democrats were in terms of trying to craft a Democratic district. The old 13th didn't run. The new 13th goes all the way down to the Metro East and comes up into Champaign-Urbana. So it's a very long narrow district. We'll see. You got to go out and introduce yourself to new voters. That's you know, Mary Miller's biggest task at this point is just introducing herself. Once voters see who she is and what her opponent is, and mostly it's just that she's a Republican and he's a Democrat, then the election's pretty much over.
Well, that's University of Illinois, Springfield, Professor Emeritus with Political Science, Dr. Kent Redfield, here on the WTIM Morning Show. More from him after this short time out. Your stream brought to you by Landmark of Taylorville, where you always do better with Landmark. And People's Bank and Trust, they put people first.
WTIM. Your information station, WTIM.
It's the WTIM Morning Show. I'm Avery Cooper. Landmark of Taylorville, proud to bring you this stream on TaylorvilleDailyNews.com's Facebook and WTIM TV YouTube. You'll always do better with Landmark. And People's Bank and Trust. They put people first. I have Professor Emeritus of Political Science at University of Illinois Springfield, Dr. Kent Redfield, on the phone. It's great to have you here on the phone to talk a little bit about all the political landscaping going on here in Illinois. Welcome, Professor.
Good to be here.
So I think the other big headline outside of the election right now, and it's been going on for a little while now, Mike Madigan and Michael McLean entered not guilty pleas in federal corruption case. I believe that came Tuesday. If you would here, Dr. Redfield, I'd appreciate a little bit of an overview of the situation leading up to this, how it stands now, and let's start there. How would you summarize this situation?
Well, we have a person that's been, one speaker for a very, very long time. First became speaker in, 1983, and was only out of the speaker's office for 2 years in that time. Required an incredible amount of power, and often when you get people in a situation of, controlling things that long, sometimes, corruption enters in. And Illinois obviously has a huge history of corruption. So what you've got is a racketeering indictment that says the speaker was running a corrupt enterprise that in relation to now both Commonwealth Edison, AT&T, two of the biggest utilities in the state of Illinois, are cooperating with a federal prosecutor that they were involved with essentially bribing the speaker, doing favors for him, hiring people that he wanted to be hired, creating jobs in exchange for influence over legislation. And the U.S. Attorney's Office has a huge indictment, and they have been using wiretaps, had a number of legislators and people within those two companies that were cooperating. And so this is now probably going to trial in March of next year. And so, every time we have corruption, we convict the governor, put him in jail, George Ryan, then we get another governor and we convict them and put them in jail. Now we've got the most powerful alderman in the city of Chicago, Ed Burke, is under indictment and going to trial, and the Speaker of the House is under indictment and going to trial. So it's not a pretty picture. We keep passing laws to change, try to get at this, but it's, we have a huge corruption problem in Illinois.
Dr. Redfield, in about 20 seconds, where do you see this case heading?
I think that when you get these kinds of indictments that talk about criminal enterprises, the U.S. Attorney's Office has been very successful in terms of piling these charges up to the point that they can convince a jury. I would not be surprised at all to see Madigan and McLean eventually found guilty of some charges. The same thing true with Alderman Burke in Chicago. Whether or not that will mean that we'll finally, try to figure out, get better laws. I don't think it's just bad apples. I think we've had some real problems in Illinois.
It's Professor Emeritus of Political Science at UIS, Dr. Kent Redfield. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you.